Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. This is the best time that my warnings went unheeded and made the client regret ever asking. I worked in recruitment for 9 years, and a few years back I had a new client, hiring manager, and she didn't like abiding by the rules set up for the recruitment team. For one thing, we reviewed the applicants, interviewed the best qualified candidates, and then submitted them to the hiring manager for consideration. Well, this hiring manager couldn't understand why we only sent over 3 candidates in a week. Honestly, she's lucky as some positions did not garner that many applicants. I explained that we submit 3 candidates for every one position available. This ensures that the hiring manager's time was considered when scheduling next step interviews. This wasn't just a standard, I said. It was approved by her company's bosses, and frankly was standard at another place I used to work as well. Hiring manager. That is absurd. I want to review all of the candidates so I can tell you whom to prescreen, and then you schedule their interview with me based on my availability. Me. But ma'am, you have almost 100 applicants that met your minimum qualification. I don't think you really want to devote that much time to reviewing all of these resumes. And honestly, some of them were not great. Hiring manager. Are you not listening? Send them all over to me and I'll take care of it. Me. Yes, ma'am. You got it? I'll send those over right away. I wrote an email to the hiring manager immediately after the call, restating the topics discussed by phone and asked, again, if she was certain she wanted all of the candidates sent to her. She confirmed. I complied and forwarded to my boss with an explanation that she will take care of reviewing all applicants and my numbers were going to be skewed for the month. I did as requested, selecting nearly 100 candidates in the system and moved them to hiring manager review. Now, what this did was send individual emails for each candidate as an update to the hiring manager, and it would ping her email every 3 days that they weren't reviewed. I smirked, knowing what was about to happen and my rear was going to get chewed out in about a week, but it felt really good because I knew I was right. 2 days later, my boss calls and says he got an irritating phone call from this hiring manager who said she never requested this, to which they responded with the information detailed in my email. She was speechless. He let her know that I would go back into the system and back up the candidate process so it would be taken out of her to-do list, and I would continue to send over candidates that were the best fit for the role as described in our processes. I never received pushback from that hiring manager ever again. I have posted here before, so maybe this is an update of sorts. My 68-year-old mother is losing her mind. It's been for a while now. We knew she had been conversing with several people online for over a year, most of which claimed to be famous men, and all of which needed money for various things. We had been telling her since December that she was being scammed, tried involving Deere and the agency who helps protect seniors, all falling on deaf ears. Courts won't do anything without a medical diagnosis. Neurologist appointments take months, so we're just stuck trying to keep her from self-destructing until then. End of February, she finally admits she needs help. Actually, she called my brother and said she was broke and he needed to fix it, but we'll say that was asking for help. Per the bank, her home was a few hours from going into foreclosure on the day we got the call from her, and her utilities were turned off the very next week. She has over $100 in credit card debt, most of it from sending these men pictures of every single credit card she has. She also gave them all of her bank account information and sent at least $30 in cash via Bitcoin ATMs or prepaid gift cards. I'm not sure I'll ever know exactly what she has spent on them, but I do know she owes $7 in taxes this year from all the withdrawals she made to her retirement, which she freely admits she sent to these men. She also still swears every one of them are actually all the celebrities they claim to be, and still truly believes one of them is the love of her life. My brother and I told her the only way we'd help is if she gave us power of attorney, which she did. We then caught up her house payments and reconnected the utilities. I have been going through her bills as I pay all of them and trying to help her budget, including finding her cheaper internet, TV, and cell phone plans so she'll be able to pay her own bills going forward on her fixed income. She has been beyond nasty to me every step of the way, telling me what a disappointment I am and she wishes I was never born. There have been suicide threats, to which she laughed in my face and told the police she would never do anything that dramatic. She calls me almost daily and tells me she fell, only for myself or the ambulance to rush over and have her admit she wasn't actually hurt, but was hoping a trip to the ear would get her pain meds. I took her phone, created a new Apple ID, and had it set so she couldn't text or call anyone not saved in her contacts, and she can't add people or numbers or apps without my approval. Only thing short of changing her number I could do to stop her contact with these scammers. She adamantly refused to change the number because she's had that one for 30 years. But she has still been getting hundreds of texts from 6-digit numbers, I'm guessing because she responded to them in the past, so they were able to get around the block. I have told her 1,000 times not to even open them, delete them, or send them to junk. She had hip replacement surgery this past week. While in the hospital, she received a text telling her she won a free oxygen machine. Call this number to claim your prize. She texts me and tells me she needs to add this number to her phone because it's a home health medical equipment company, and she wants to talk to them about Lifey Alert, so I add their number. She calls and they tell her she just needs to give them her bank account information to cover the shipping, and she gives it to them. Then she calls to crow about her winning. I call the same number, and what do you know? I'm also an instant winner if I will just give them my bank account information. Hit 0 to speak with a person, and now I've won a free year of DirecTV. Hit 0 again, and now I've won a free year of pest control from Terminix if I just enter my bank account information. So a total scam that my mother has again fallen for while laying in her hospital bed recovering from surgery. Like the last 2 months didn't happen, like she has learned nothing from this whole experience. She does not even need an oxygen machine, but decided that since her parents had breathing issues at the end of their lives, and because it was free, this opportunity was too good to pass up in case she needs one later. She tells me to just call them back and cancel, because I'm sure the kind phone scammers will totally forget your bank account if I just ask nicely. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, she has been showing signs of progressive dementia and is at moderately severe cognitive decline on the staging models. So I get it. This is the new normal for her. She no longer possesses the mental capacity to understand real from fake, and she will continue to fall for stuff like this as long as she's alive. And I can't do anything to stop it. I can just crawl along behind her and try to fix it while hoping she shows up to the neuro in May so I can get the courts to intervene. She will always be a danger to herself and her own well-being, with the added bonus of being awful to me every step of the way. So I've decided I'm done trying to save her from herself. I'm opening another new bank account for her tomorrow and putting what little money she still has in it. I've turned off all the automatic payments that have been coming out of my account and will be turning off all of the parental controls I'd established on her electronics. Then I'm telling her good luck, don't call me when you're on fire again. And then I'm blocking her on my phone. My brother and I believe she'll be in a mess again by the 4th of July. Her problem, not ours. I've had a heart issue for 2 years now, inappropriate sinus tachycardia that isn't responding to medication. Both of my cardiologists have told me that stress is exacerbating my condition. I've lost 25 pounds over the last 3 months, which I'm also chalking up to stress. I literally cannot explain the peace I feel in my soul tonight, knowing that I've done everything I could for this woman, and now I just get to be done tomorrow. It's complicated and sad and frustrating because oh how I have tried to help her and I know how this will end. But it's also so very calming to know that I'm done. I'm free. 25 male, have been living away from home ever since graduating from college. My parents both retired recently, and last summer they decided to use some of the money they'd saved up to finally build their dream retirement home in New Orleans, where they've been living for the past 10 years. I come from a very tight-knit family, so I still talk to my parents every week, and they were so excited when they said they'd already picked out the location where they wanted the house built. It was an empty lot in a nice neighborhood where a house had been demolished not long before due to age, and the previous owner, who was pretty wealthy and owned numerous properties around the city, decided that the lot was worth more without the house on it. Anyway, my parents snapped it up as soon as it came on the market, but not long after construction began, they realized that they were building their dream house right next door to the lair of a wild Karen. The trouble started when my parents had to cut down a large oak tree that sat in the front of the lot. It was a real beauty, too, one of those big southern live oaks, and although they didn't want to, they knew they had to remove it because it was in the way. No one likes to cut down a big, beautiful tree, and believe me, if there was a way to avoid doing it without impeding the construction, my parents would have taken it. So they called a tree removal service, and the tree was soon gone. Well, a few days after the tree had been cut down, my dad was on the property talking to some of the construction guys and making sure everything was going smoothly. He was going back to his car when he saw a woman in her late 50s walk out of the house next door and head to her mailbox. My dad, let's call him John, is a pretty chill and laid-back guy who likes to be on good terms with everyone, so he walked over and introduced himself. "Hi," he said, holding out his hand. "My name's John, and my wife and I are going to be your neighbors once our house is finished. I just wanted to come over and say hi and introduce myself. It's nice to meet you. What's your name?" Karen glanced at the extended hand, then looked up at my dad and glared at him. "My name is none of your business," she snapped. "I'm not going to shake your hand because of COVID, and even if there was no COVID, I still wouldn't shake your hand because you people ruined my life when you cut down my tree. I still can't believe how selfish you are. You should both be ashamed of yourselves." My dad was taken aback by this and pointed out that Karen already had a nice big oak tree in her backyard, but Karen ignored him and stalked back inside her house. She never explained why she thought she was the owner of the tree that had been cut down, not once, and whenever my parents asked about it, she refused to answer. I guess it's just one of those things we'll never know, like what really happened to the lost Roanoke colony or the fate of D.B. Cooper. My parents met some of their other neighbors later that day, including a nice elderly couple who lived in the other house next door, Karen's. And when my dad told them what happened, the neighbors said Karen was like that to everyone, and no one in the neighborhood liked her. They also said that Karen had been nasty to them for a long time, and they were in the process of selling their house because they couldn't stand living next door to her anymore. Karen soon began living up to her reputation. For months, whenever my parents would visit the house to see how the construction was coming along, she'd find something to complain or confront them about. One time, she said the construction workers were being too loud and threatened to call the police, even though it was the middle of the day. Another time, she said that the construction company was using illegal immigrants as cheap labor and threatened to call ICE and have the whole project shut down. My dad mentioned this to the owner of the company, and the owner sent Karen a formal letter threatening a lawsuit if she tried. I don't know if there were any actual grounds for a lawsuit, but the threat must have worked because ICE never showed up. Oh, and then there was the time she tried to have my parents' car towed for illegal parking when they parked by the curb of their still unfinished house. The first my parents knew about this was when the tow truck showed up, but the driver took one look at where my parents' car was parked and told Karen he'd send her a bill for wasting his time if she called him again. I could go on. Karen did everything she could think of trying to interfere. She was absolutely relentless in her crusade to avenge a tree she never even owned. Happily, the house was completed despite her best efforts, and my parents finally moved in not long after the holidays. My mom told me later that she caught Karen watching them bitterly from her window as they were taking some of their boxes inside. She was concerned that Karen might keep going and try something else, but I guess Karen was too busy wallowing in self-pity over her failure or something, because things were actually quiet for a while. But a few weeks ago, things changed. New Orleans has had some really bad weather lately due to the winter storms that are battering much of the southern U.S. right now. And one night, one of those storms was so powerful that it knocked over the tree in Karen's backyard. It missed falling onto her house, but it didn't miss falling onto her shiny new Jaguar and crushing it like a beer can. According to my folks, Karen didn't discover what happened until the following morning. When she came outside and saw the pile of scrap metal that used to be her car, she threw back her head and let out a primal scream like something out of The Exorcist. She had to pay a tree removal service to get rid of the tree, and then she had to pay for a tow truck to get rid of the car too, and then she had to get a rental car too. Karen put her property up for sale and moved out not long afterward. Everyone in the neighborhood was glad to see her go, and my parents enjoyed watching her drive off into the sunset from the front porch of their amazing new house. Edit. For clarification, Karen did not sell her house right away. She put it on the market and moved out of it as soon as she could. I don't know where she is now, but I'm guessing she's staying somewhere else while she waits for someone to buy the property. I don't know if anyone has bought it yet, but since there's a pandemic going on, I think she'll be waiting for some time. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. Some Karen witch literally attacked me. She bring her teenage son into the ER because he was skateboarding and fell, scraped both knees and dislocated the other. While waiting for a doctor to reset his knee, I was tasked to clean both of his knees as bits of dirt and gravel has gotten to the wound. This current started shouting at me, "You have to have my permission to give my child first aid." I literally picked my head up and said, "Excuse you," this witch replies back, "I did not sign any waivers giving you permission to treat my son." I told her, "You signed the document when you filled out the intake form." Karen literally stomps her foot and crosses both of her arms over her chest and tilts her nose up in the air and scoffs fine. I recompose myself and say in my head, this woman is about to get security called on her crazy self. As I am cleaning his scrapes on both knees, I can tell he is not comfortable with the antiseptic that was used to clean his skin. I say to him, "I know this hurts. Please try your best to hold still." I get the antibiotic ointment and a sterile cotton swab and gently rub the ointment over his wounds, trying not to irritate the poor lad any more than he has already been through. Then finally comes the part where I dress both wounds. We use a non-stick gauze pad sports bandage as I did not want him to have any more trauma to his already damaged skin when he has to remove the bandage later and continue to apply the antibiotic cream. I wrap the wounds very well, and my head nurse double-checks my work. She gives me the approval and calls the doctor in. While I'm cleaning the mess up, the Karen shoves me, literally puts hands on me, out of the way, and starts tearing off her son's bandages. He screams and says, "Mom, what are you doing?" At this point, I physically grab her by her shoulders and pin her to the wall, while struggling to call security on my radio. She managed to snatch one of the bandages off of her son, literally in a split second. I had to physically pin her to the wall while security placed her in handcuffs. Son is screaming and crying while he watches the security guards enter the room and drag his batshit crazy Karen of mother away, literally kicking and screaming and trying to kick the security guards. I'm not sure how hospitals are in the part of the world where the reader watches this, but security guards at hospitals here in Estonia are basically uniformed police officers. And hitting one of them is a very serious offense. I am talking prison sentence. They carry pistol as well as taser and riot spray. The hospital director storms over and notices the politsei taking her away to a holding room in the hospital until one of their patrol officers can take this crazy Karen to jail. He asks what is going on. The female officer is in the room with self and I and son. Son is traumatized, crying very much. I explained to him that this crazy woman assaulted me and attempted to rip the bandages off of her son's legs. He has a very shocked look on his face. Karen was arrested, charged with assaulting a healthcare worker, me, and 2 counts of assaulting police officer, as well as child endangerment and disturbing the good order of the public. I am new to working in medicine, and I seriously am reconsidering something else. This is not the first time I have had to deal with crazy patients. I, 31 male, have a sister, 28 female, that has honestly been the golden child to my mother but not my father for as long as I can remember. My parents divorced when I was a teenager because my mother cheated with an old high school ex-boyfriend and has always been controlling, manipulative, and narcissistic. And sadly, my sister was like her little mini-men. Our mother also seemed to believe she had total authority over me any time she so much as snapped her fingers. She'd snap them and order me around like a dog. It was demeaning. And my sister always backed her up, too. So no surprise I went to live with my dad full-time after our parents split, while my sister stayed with Mom. The two of them were very alike, and both pretty much stopped speaking with my father unless it was about money. Though I'm more like my dad. My father was very business-oriented and started teaching me how to do his line of work as soon as I was 16. I got pretty good at it. And after 12 years of working for my father, I was made a partner in his company. Things were great. But then about 8 months ago, tragedy struck. My father had become somewhat immunocompromised due to being a heavy smoker for much of his life and died at only 60 years old after he caught 19. I met my mother and sister for the first time in years after we had a socially distanced funeral for my father over video call. My father was cremated by his own request and buried in a local cemetery. So there was no body or casket. My sister seemed to grieve, but my mother looked indifferent the entire time. Though I honestly was not surprised. The last time she saw my father, she screamed at him that he owed her more money and then threatened to sue him, to which he just laughed at her. He'd paid alimony and child support as long as he was legally mandated to, and no more than that. And he even put 30 toward my sister's college fund. But 10 years after the divorce, he was no longer legally required to send Mom money anymore because of the judge's ruling. And she's by no means broke. She works the same job she's had for nearly 3 decades, fully owns the old family home we used to share, and even rents out 2 of the rooms in it to Airbnb regularly. She's by no means hurting for money. Sometime after the funeral, my dad's will was read. Apparently, he'd figured that if his heavy smoking didn't eventually do him in, something else would, and even joked about it in a pre-recorded video. I was pretty much willed nearly all of his assets from most of his money to his business and home. He left my sister a car, 2015 Nissan Altima, and about $10K in cash. My mother only got $1,000 and a few other items that she'd been claiming were rightfully hers since the divorce. Beyond that, I got the rest. And my girlfriend now lives with me in the house my father passed down to me. My sister pretty much went from finishing 2 years of community college to living off her boyfriend and only working part-time online for several years. And during that time, she got pregnant but suffered a traumatic miscarriage. I wasn't aware till after the funeral because we were practically no contact and no one else told me. When lockdown hit, her boyfriend's job started downsizing little by little, and eventually he was only able to stay on part-time, which hampered hers and his finances to the point he was finally telling her she needed to look for better employment as well, since he was trying to find a second job. And then she got pregnant. She claims her and her Beth were careful, calls it her miracle baby. One evening, I got an unexpected knock at my door. And when I answered, I was unpleasantly greeted by both my mother and sister. They both walked right in without even asking and made themselves comfortable in my living room. My girlfriend and I shared a look of confusion, and I asked why they'd come by. My sister was giggling and looking all over, opening doors and seemingly giving herself a tour of my home. My mother had just plopped herself down on my sofa and snapped her fingers while demanding a cold, bottled water. My Jeff got the water for her, and I asked what they were here for. My sister seemed all giddy and just ignored me to continue snooping around my home. And before long, I heard her yell from down the hall, "Mommy, it's perfect." Yes. She still calls her Mommy. My mother finally spoke up and said, "Well, I think it's time to did your brotherly duty." To which I was like, "What?" My mother then proceeded to say, "Now that your father has passed, this house should have gone to me since I was his only spouse. But you can still fix this. You make plenty of money and could just buy a new house. Your sister needs this one so much more since she's the one with a baby on the way. But if you're so determined on staying, you could just keep to one room and cover all of the bills until you decide to move out." My Jeff and I read enough Reddit to know exactly where this is going and how it'd play out if I let it go on. So I guess you could say we were mentally prepared. I took a deep breath and stated aloud, "That's not happening. You don't order me around, especially not in my own goddamn home. Yes, I make plenty of money. But like that, I'm going to save it for when I really need it. Not that you care." My mother started snapping her fingers at me like she used to and loudly stated, "Stop. I am your mother, and you will do as I say because I brought you into this world, and I'm the one in charge here. And as far as you're concerned, I am God. That means when I say jump, you say, how high? This house is rightfully mine, and your sister will live here. Consider this your formal eviction. But since I'm gracious, I'll give you 2 weeks to pack your bags and transfer the deed to me." In the back of my mind, I'm thinking this can't be real, but then I just grabbed my cell phone and started dialing. My mother quickly stood up and yelled, "What are you doing?" And I retorted, "I'm doing what I should have done as soon as this shit started. I'm calling the cops to get you out of my damn house." She started swiping at me and managed to knock my phone out of my hand. Then she proceeded to try and stomp on it. But I was quick enough to snatch it up before she could. That's it. "If you don't leave, I will force you out myself." My mother proceeded to slap me across the face. And I returned the favor twice as hard backhanded. So much so I ended up knocking her back down onto the couch. She held her hand over her reddening and smeared makeup face in total shock, and then yelled, "How dare you!" I went back to dialing on my phone and said that if she didn't leave, I would have police come and remove her by force. My sister came barreling in between us, holding her arms out and saying that I should just do the right thing for once in my life and be a good big brother. I snapped and said, "Oh, really? I'm the bad sibling?" Last I checked, I was the one who's had to work for a living since I was a teenager. I had to do all the chores in the house while you just sat on your butt playing video games or talking with your friends all day. And you used to steal my hard-earned money just to go out shopping after you spent all of your allowance. You're a complete moochin' thief. So, I don't owe you crap. Now, both of you get out before I decide to dial this last number. My sister started to tear up crying like a baby and said, "Mommy, make him stop." My mother began hugging her and kissing her cheeks while giving me a death glare. Then she seemed to think she'd gotten smart and said, "If you do call the police, I can just tell them that you hit me. And who knows, I could maybe say to everyone you wanted to do a lot worse to a poor pregnant girl in need. I don't think that'd be a very good thing for your—" I cut her off with a raised hand and said, "Just stop. If you haven't noticed, my girlfriend over there has had her phone out recording almost this whole time. And that means we have recorded evidence of you assaulting me first and openly stating you'd lie to police. I don't think that'd be so good for your reputation at your job or your little Airbnb. If looks could kill, my mother would have blew me up like a tactical nuke." But she quickly deflated and started dragging my crying sister out by the arm. My sister was somehow acting like a complete toddler and broke loose of our mother's grip to sit down on my porch step and have a tantrum. I just gave my mother a look and said, "Do you see now? This is the result of the spoiled way you raised her." She glared at me again, and then I was treated to a show of my mother trying to drag my sister off of my porch step. But she latched onto the porch handrails and kept saying, "You promised me," over and over again. I let out a cackle and told them both from the door to never come back. My mother flipped me the bird and then went back to trying to drag my sister off the porch. It took a few minutes, but she finally got my sister to get up and leave with her by saying, "I am a cruel, heartless bastard who will go to hell for this." I laughed some more and said that there's also a special place in hell for liars and narcissists who try to manipulate others to get their way. My mother clenched her fists and was about to say more when I just held up my smartphone again with it recording and said, "The clock is ticking, Mom. Get off my property." My mother then walked my sister to the car, gave me one last snooty look, and drove off. I thought that was the end of it. But letting things go was never something my mother would do. After a few days, I started getting messages from people I know and some relatives online. A lot of them were furious with me, but others just had questions about what was going on. I tried to check my Facebook, but couldn't see anything they were saying because my sister and mother both blocked me on their social media. But my girlfriend could still see everything because they kept their profiles set to open. We screenshotted everything and then printed some of it out. Both of their profiles had posts that called me a greedy, heartless bastard who stole the house that was meant to be my sister's inheritance right out from under her by paying off the lawyer who handled Dad's will, which is a complete and utter lie, and they both know it. I called my lawyer, who was also my father's lawyer and a trusted family friend, and gave him copies of all the screenshots from Facebook and the video my girlfriend had recorded the day my mother demanded my house. He wanted to just write a formal C&D. But I wanted to take it further than that. And he sent them a letter I told him to write via express mail that had to be signed for. So I know they got it. My mother called me in an absolute fury the same day the letter was delivered. I told her that if she and my sister didn't redact all of the untrue social media posts they made about me and tell the absolute truth, I'd send all of the information I have to the whole family, her boss, and upload the videos we'd recorded of her online. And then I'd sue her on top of it. She called me unreasonable and that she just did what she did for my sister's sake. And then went into a full-blown lecture reiterating her belief that my sister still needs my house more than me. I bluntly stated I didn't care what she thought. And if she didn't redact everything and tell the truth, I'd make sure her career would be over. She begrudgingly said, "Fine. You win. Have it your way and keep the damn house," before hanging up the phone. That very evening, all of the lying posts disappeared from both their profiles. I was unblocked, and my mother gave me and everyone else a half-assed apology, claiming she jumped the gun with everything she said. Because she thought my sister needed my house more than me because she's broke and pregnant. But the house was rightfully mine according to my father's will, and she knew that even before my father passed away. So she had no right to try and claim it. As for my sister, She also apologized, but more or less just parroted everything her mother said while claiming she just went along with her ideas. And then she blamed what she did all on our mother and her pregnancy hormones. The replies poured in for some time on both my mother and sister's profiles. Many furious with them for trying to take my house. I got a lot messages of sorries and my bads from those who'd previously believed her. But all it really did was show me who was more on her side to begin with, since they were all believing her nonsense so quickly. They were mostly people from her side of the family anyway. No one on my father's side believed her at all, and openly said so. My sister and her boyfriend ended up moving in with our mother to save money. But she put them in the basement to keep her Airbnb running. And my sister started crying on social media that she can't live upstairs. And I'm pretty sure the two of them were fighting with each other, because all my sister did after that is complain online. And my mother barely posted anything on her SM anymore because of the previous stunt she'd tried. And for those of you who read this far, it's not the end of the story. Stay tuned for the rest soon. I was just reminiscing about the absurdity of this situation that happened almost 2 years ago, and I've decided it's too good not to share. I'll be honest, it involves a lot of legal stuff that I'm not sure I'm talking about 100 correctly, but I can assure you this story is true as is the end result. This might be a long one, so buckle up. For context, my mom is a traveling healthcare worker, not a nurse nor a doctor, just to clarify, and we're from the U.S. Usually her contracts last from 8 weeks to 9 months, and she's worked all around the States. This results in an ungodly amount of airline miles that she likes to gift me so I can visit her wherever she's on contract. I get a nice vacation, she gets to see me, I get to see her. Win, win, win. 2 years ago, after I graduated and was living at my mom and her long-term boyfriend's house in a COVID lockdown-induced depression and existential crisis, my mother scored her first overseas contract on a tropical island for 6 months, from June to the end of November. I had gotten a shitty job in my hometown to start saving for whatever my next step was. 3 months in, my mom realized the downside to being on a very small island where international travel to and fro was a pain in the butt. She was lonely. This prompted a very bashful phone call in which she asked me if I wanted to take a break from working and come stay with her for a while. I jumped at the opportunity and we made arrangements to get my passport renewed and booked a ticket for me to stay with her for the last few months of her contract. All of this context comes to the main character, another U.S.-based traveler, also not a nurse nor a doctor, who was my mother's coworker. Let's call her Mary. Mary, to put it bluntly, was racist as hell. And she was not enjoying getting paid to work on an island with crystal blue water on white sand beaches. You ask why? Because she failed to realize that she wouldn't be treating elite white resort goers. No. Turns out the people who tend to be treated at the local hospital were the native islander. You know, the people of color. She was also a COVID denier, Trumper, and anti-vaxxer. Really, just a blast to talk to, sarcasm. She was so livid about having to go to a grocery shop surrounded by POC, not what she called them. Hint, it starts with N and ends with R. It didn't matter that she could go to the beach every day after work and was lodged in a multi-million-dollar vacation home on one of the highest points of the island with a gorgeous view. Nah. She was too busy recoiling at the sight of, gasp, melanin. So yeah, she hated being there and wanted nothing more than to leave. She latched onto my mother for company, and my mother reluctantly obliged her for a time due to aforementioned loneliness. The main conflict of this story comes when my mother's contract began to reach its end, while Mary still had a month to go. Mary fought tooth and nail to renegotiate an early end of her contract, but was denied. So what does she do? She just leaves. Like, packs all her stuff and parts to the U.S. anyway. No biggie, right? She just doesn't get her remaining paychecks. Wrong. Here comes the beauty of contracts. See, the contract she agreed to comp her lodging on the condition she fulfill her employment duties. Since she very clearly had no intention to, the contract was therefore voided and the compensation for her lodging was promptly retracted. She was now on the hook to pay back this country's health ministry for the several months of rent they had paid to house her in that gorgeous vacation home with a beautiful view. I'm not sure how much it would have been, but I'm guessing $1 million at the very least. Mary was now not only a crap employee in this country, but a literal fugitive. But she figured they could only arrest and charge her if she ever stepped foot back on their soil, so she wasn't concerned. She was mostly right, but that wasn't the only thing this country's government could do. They proceeded to ring up the good old U.S. government, notify them of the charges, and let them take it from there. They couldn't have her extradited, but they could ask the U.S. to flag her passport until she paid them or faced charges. So the U.S. government said, "Sure, buddy, we'll do it." And they did. Mary can't leave the U.S. anymore. She can't even go to Canada. She tried to join her friends on vacation in Mexico, but wouldn't be allowed to cross the border. So, if you ever think you screwed up a job really badly, just remember that you at least aren't an actual international criminal who can no longer leave the country. I'm not sure why her racist butt even wanted to go to Mexico. I heard there are a lot of Mexican people there. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.